Good
Yep.
morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you again for listening to another episode on Talk Architecture podcast. I'm your host, Naziaty Mohd Yaacob, and I would like to welcome Architect Wooi. Hi, Architect.
Hi,
Should
Naziaty. Long
I call
time.
you Lok Wooi or Wooi?
Just call me Lok Wooi will do. Yeah.
Yeah, Lok Wooi, yes. I've known you since a long time ago in University Technology Malaysia in Johor Bahru.
Yep.
That was the first time I met you when you were with Jimmy Lim. And after that, you were on your own. And of course, again in 1996, when you assisted with our third year with me as a part-time lecturer. But you have also been with many other schools of architecture in Malaysia, such as and being the adjunct professor for University Putra Malaysia from 2008 and 2015, and no, and on and off with University Malaya and so many other universities such as UTM, Taylor's, UITM, UKM, and so on, right? So
Yes.
that's why I would love to hear your opinion on design courses in architecture schools. Um, for example, just a very we're going to go into, because I know you love manual drawings, you love wooden architecture, you love the tactility of it all. So I would like to look at some of anything, a design problem that could be to do with construction or design or the whole anything at all, to do with the context, to do with the urban design problems in architecture design courses in school compared to design problems in architecture practice? Is there a difference when we think about design problems, when we focus on design problem, as when we tackle it in school as a student of architecture, and as we tackle it in as an architect in practice? So what is the main difference when tackling a design problem in school compared to in practice? And why do we need to get the graduates well equipped for the challenge of practice? There is a
Yeah.
catch there, with
Yeah.
this question. If you would like to
Yeah.
start the
Yeah.
ball rolling,
Yeah, I think
go
yeah,
into
I
it.
think it's quite it's a very question that I think we are keep asking ourselves. I think as a practitioner or you're teaching, this always the issue, right? While in academic we try to say, well, we are not producing economic agent. I mean, people are ready to plug in. We want people with critical thought. But when you go to the profession, then they're complaining. Why these people don't know one bomba also don't know. They're expecting like really like plug and play type of architects, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then again, I think there another aspect is that I think the making of an architect is like two main portion. One is like the degree course, which is 3 years, and then they'll take a break, or some don't with a good result. They probably proceed with a master. So I think your question about like what do you call the different, but I think there's a lot of different, and yet I think there's similarity. I think in architecture, things are created twice. First, you must come out with a sort of a drawing, your idea, transform from your idea to a drawing and a model or what have you. That is the part where the education stop, right? But the real life practice is that it's actually from the drawing you put it in place in the real terms, right? Which I think most of the architects, maybe if they are architecture student, unless they go to a internship, even 6 months is not very long. They chances are they don't really get that whole process. They probably came in between, or they go to the side, or what have you. So I would say I think to the you're talking about being educating and architects, I think it's still to prepare them for practice. It's really, I think we have to from the university point of view, I think you have to make a position. I think you cannot have both. Like recently, I find that the student from Kansas, University of Kansas is interesting. Like when they are in third year, they actually have to involve in the real life project for the entire year, right? So that means they have to get something built, and then they have to find the funding or whatever. Then I think they will have an advantage of like being into the industry faster. right? Fourth year also apparently they have one, and fifth year also have one. Like in Malaysia, I don't see any university that's doing that, right? So you're talking about dovetailing, preparing them into practice. I think in Malaysia, I don't think we don't really have that paradigm shift yet. That's one aspect, right? So I from my viewpoint, I don't know how. I think although I'm very active being a reviewer and examiner and all that, I make my thought very clear. And even recently with Utah, I'm the industrial advisory panel there. But I think we are one of the many. And then you are like in touch only for about a few weeks, right? A few weeks. Oh no, even one day mainly, the intensive thing that you look at. I really don't know how, but that I would say that in terms of education, for me, I still feel that overall our degree one I can understand. Like they just get to know architecture, so everything is very well structured, right? And then the phenomena that I see is that, while in a good school, the student are always being drilled or told them that design is so important. And then after their internship, they work a little bit before they come into the master. I noticed that a lot of them lost steam or they lost trust, meaning a lot of them come back to me. In fact, I was interviewed with a group of students year 4, and then some of them like privately revealed to me that it's so mundane. The client don't really care about what you said. Like every time they attend, but they are talking about medium firm probably. Like the developer, client side is probably more interested in cutting costs and rather than interested in the idea. So when they come into the master degree, I find that the education somehow being an educator, we need to I wouldn't say reoriented them, but somehow try to find out what is the issue. A lot of them actually, some don't even continue, right? And when they are actually continuing in the master, I feel that we are still in the same mind frame. We're still very structured. Although I mean, in master, like typically in the fourth year, like you have urban design, high rises and all that, with the view that high rise is like so that they know, what's a critical thing about fire thing. But I don't think it need to take semester to learn. I think that could have picked up outside of the school, right? And I feel that structure could have been more open, right? In fact, when I go to some university, I know they're very structured. They must have the SOA, schedule area, must have this complexity or whatever. But I feel that especially fifth year, they should be more adventurous and having involved with quite a few students overseas as well. Like more recently, I think one probably you already interviewed, like Yvonne, I know I mentioned her name, but I'm just saying she's studying in AA, right? So the AA is interesting, like unit based. So like 20s, they are like, they really find the topic that they want, and then they sort of match up with people outside of the university that will take them through from idea to until their final outcome, right? Which I don't think it happened here. I think here in the university that I'm involved in, I still feel that some people blame Flam, and as you know, you're in the clubhouse with me and all that. In fact, LAM on their own with a guideline and all that, it seems they still give a lot of flexibility, but the outcome is such that all school, I think they tend to fall back to, I call it the HHU, you must have housing, you must have high rise, and must urban. I think that sort of a framework is sort of like important. I'm not saying that they are irrelevant, but it's somehow, I think it is still, to me, it's a bit too structured to what do you call to encourage a student to think more freely. So I'll stop at that and then we'll see how we question.
Yeah. This is really interesting that you bring out all these points. And then I was thinking that the fifth year, when we go back to the fifth year, you mentioned about Chia Yvonne and the last of the year that she was in the fifth year in AA. And then you were talking about the degree and the internship. And Okay, we go back into understanding practice later, but we focus now, the next discussion, on this design thesis and the importance of the design thesis. And then this design thesis sits in between or at the end of that HHU, which is the housing high-rise urban course, because when we think about the first 3 years, grasping on the technical aspects, the structure and services integration and all that, and focusing on the technical complexities. Usually that's why you have this housing and high rise, because that's the most complex that it get, that's why it's introduced in the 4th year. I'm thinking about what was the idea behind the introduction of housing and high rise in the 4th year or the 5th year, and somehow in the middle of that is the design thesis, which could be a housing and high rise, or it could be any other topic, like a more.
But for 5th year, I don't think they are being hold up by things like this. I don't think so, right?
Okay.
I think 5th year is quite open, in the sense that in terms of topic. But what I mean is that it's still, I feel that okay, one of the university, right? The student that quite frequently I went there for about, I think 4 or 5 times, right? Where I was 3 years there as an examiner. So the key, like in a student exit meeting, the most problem that they have is that, like they have to be, the topic have to be vetted through. As you know, the program is chose by the student, so is the site, right? They only have a guideline, maybe how big is the site and how much of a build up that they expect. But the topic that vetted through by the lecturer, which is fair enough, a group, a panel of 5 and things like that. Then they came out with the ideation, the process. And the next semester, when they go on to proceed with the detail of the this thing, is another separate set of lecturer, right? Like probably not as sympathetic as the earliest one, or those people who understood the thing. And then some like got knocked back and stuff like that. And to me, I think that is a mismatch, right? So I mentioned, like, for example, AA
What
is
is the
that
problem there? I mean,
huh?
what is the problem that you discover with that sort of system?
It's because, you see, I think the lecturer are probably okay, I turn it around. Let's look at the AA system, which I find that it's actually more workable. Like the student want a topic, let's say climate change and whatever, right? And then they source out, like they have like 26 unit or whatever, and then they find the lecturer that we're going to take them through the whole year. And then it's like a matching process almost, right? And then that lecturer also very committed, and then probably they have the expertise or experience to guide the student through from an ideation to a very detailed thing. But in our system, even the lecturer might be doctorate or what have you, nothing wrong with that. But to have that the interest, for example, the ideology that the student might want, you also cannot expect the lecturer to know everything, right? So I think it is like, for example, like my student, if they wanted to learn about timber, then if they pair with me, it seems to work very well. But not that I'm an expert, but I know where for them to learn more. Like, for example, Gulu Lamb is not really well known in Malaysia, but I did interview somebody overseas, did the Mactan airport or whatever. Then I can pair them with them to actually find the thing. But you have to find me first, right? That's what I'm trying to say. That if it's, let's say, talk about timber lah, but let's say other people probably interested in climate change, they shouldn't come and see me. They should actually pair with some practitioner, ideally, like even outside, maybe overseas or whatever, with digital or what have you. And then from there, I think then only you don't have this mismatch. And in that particular university, always the biggest issue is that when they move on to the next semester, they feel that they are not really getting the support that they
Okay.
have. Right?
Let me go and put it another way. If you were to look at architecture education, not 5 years, but 9 years.
Too
Okay.
long.
Wait. Let me go and explain to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to do a 9-year course. That's not what I meant. When you finish 5th year, because a lot of the issues that was raised today, when you raise some issues like the internship, do they actually get to learn, and is that the right time to learn it is after part one. It's not what I meant. Actually, the technical part of it, when you talk about fourth year, the technical part of architecture, and much of architecture education is to actually bring somebody to technical competence. They have to do design, yes, but technical competence is the end goal. So the point I'm trying to make is that fifth year is 4 years before. 4 years before is that's fifth year, and 4 years after before part three. The estimation. So what happens after fifth year? Okay, first, second, third, 4 years after fifth year, what happened? So actually, that is that time when you think that you pass the baton. When you talk about collaboration, that's why when you mention about practitioner is important to be part of the collaboration in the architecture design studio courses. And I have had this in mind. I've written about it, where there are three types. You mentioned about expert just now on timber. There are three types of role that the students have to have in a design thesis, where they are the driver, but they collaborate with these three roles. And that role could be in one person, or it could be in 3-person or 2-person, which is the coach, the person who knows where they're at and where they should be in that journey, the coach, which is the consultant, which could be the external critique that come and ask about the design problem and how the solution is. And the third one is the expert, which could be the climate change guy or the timber guy. And for me, I do a lot of universal design expertise as well. So when my student doing like a universal design or elderly folks home or something, naturally I would take the expert role in the detail design later on. So the point I'm trying to make is that there is, when the fifth year, the student drive their own car, so to speak. I mean, in certain universities, they are more independent earlier. But there is at least, and when you say that there shouldn't be a change of lecturer from first semester design thesis to second semester design thesis, I agree wholeheartedly, because there is when they decided on the topic, it's not like we are robots, right? The student, when you have a supervisor, even in PhD or PhD, that person is committed to you until the end. So that is always, there's something that's natural where you have a supervisor committed to your design. You can't just like plug and play like what you said. So I was just trying to summarize all these things for our conversation here, because we have had this conversation a couple of years already in Clubhouse and so on, and that we seem to be in agreement with certain of these points. I'm sure there are people interested in between us what we agree and what we disagree on, and I think this is what we agree on so far, isn't it, Lok?
Yeah.
So maybe I can go to the next question.
Sure. Carry on.
So that you can explore other thoughts that you have. You can always go back to this point later on, the ones that
sure.
So now when we think about the challenges of architecture practice, we have the people working in architecture practice, the fresh graduates, which I request that we look at it like 9 years, meaning that after you graduate from fifth year, you have these fresh graduates. Some of them are going to give up. I've heard of people giving up because they end up working for the client that is so cost conscious, and this student is not numb. His character is more exploring. So he got a client, and then his boss will say, no, you just have to deal with your client how you should deal with the client.
Good training.
And then he wants to do graphic design. There was a previous discussion on this, is in fact in the podcast. He wanted to do graphic design rather than architecture. So that's why we have people like that, or we have people who negotiate very well the first 3 or 4 years of architecture before part 3, for example. In this viewpoint or consideration of people dropping out from architecture, what are the challenges of architecture practice from your perspective going forward? And I would like to also add whether Pam has done enough in your point of view, or is it Pam alone, or is it there should be much more discussion on this? There should be much more study on this. There should be much more looking into what the role of architecture schools could provide in order that be less dropout from architecture.
Yeah, but I somehow take a quite a different angle to look at this
Oh,
issue.
sure. Yeah.
Because I think there's some research I think I heard somewhere. I mean, I stand to be corrected. I think it's only about 7% of the graduate that eventually having a firm and running their own firm. And like what I said, it's already a very long course. That's why you're mentioning 9 years. I know your idea is quite different. It's not so much to increase the academic 9 years, but a good part of it actually you've like sort of put them in practice. It sort of remind me of UTS, University Technology Sydney. During my time, I almost go in there. Like it's sort of like you work part-time, you work full-time. No, you work part-time, but you study part-time also, right? And then UTM back in 2017 or 2018, I was involved in the PCCA program. But I find that they also got its own set of challenges because the students are working full-time. And then the idea, Dr. Halim, my good friend, was saying that, but it's quite a good move that, you will have, for example, the student would tend to have need a supervisor. So it's their supervisor in the office become their supervisor. In theory, it seems to work, but I don't think it works all the time. In fact, some of the students, I don't see them turn up until the final moment. I really give them a hard time because you don't know how they progress. Suddenly, they have their project sort of like, right in front of you, right? So I would say that
I wasn't really thinking about that architecture program. I understand what you mean because I came across it when the AA also wanted to do such a program in the 1980s. But I was thinking in theory that people are still learning after the fifth year. You're not going to have all the learning done right until fifth year because architecture is an
application based, yeah.
base, applied technology or
Applied
something like
technology,
that.
so to speak,
So
yeah.
it's not going to be, everything is going to be sorted out in 5 years. But we don't look at our curriculum that way. You see that they are still learning.
But actually, I now I'm worried more on the bigger picture.
Okay,
How
go on.
architecture as a profession has been totally changed in program, right? I have a good friend in Dr. Zaki, the UPM.
Yeah.
I like his approach. I like sympathetic or aligned with the approach of more humanity based, right? More holistic based, right? And versus a reductionist type of approach. And this one, I think, go across even UPM or wherever. We always have this rubric, like we want to judge or evaluate the student, right? And then, interesting enough, they're also using a rubric to assess whether a lecturer should be promoted or not. But all those are very much engineering based. They're very reductionist. I can see the value of rubric in a sense that it sort of give the student idea of what to expect, how many 1 to 100 a section now, whatever, right? So it's sort of detail out the certain bulk of deliverable, right? But you will look at it totally, let's say we move forward a little bit, right? If we have a student like, let's say Zaha Hadid with his curve and all that, or Frank Gehry one, some of these actually cannot be drawn by a standard plan, right? So like all those rubric won't work. I mean, if I were to go to the extreme, right? But my issue with that is more like it become like a run sheet, like when you want to assess this student, compare with that. Like we lost the overall because normally we experience the students' work or architecture in a very holistic manner. Like we're impressed by this, right? It's not because his concept is better than his presentation or his technical is better than the rest or whatever. So I would say it's tend to be a holistic type of way of looking at this. Now, that's the first thing, meaning the application of rubric, I think very much engineering based, and engineering 1 + 1 = 2, but whereas for architect we tend to be more artistic based. We're probably more artistically inclined, like 1 + 1 may equal to 3 or 4 or whatever, right? So I think that sort of a mismatch, right, also put the architectural lecturer in a very bad spot in my view. And then okay, bigger a wider picture, right? You look at a lot of university, the top, look at JKR, other institution, the top is actually an engineer, right? And then you just look at all the university, they're engineering based. And then I got a good friend, I think you know also, Chia Kok Meng. He just came and have durian with me last week or week before. It is that the beginning of last year, the department will be parked under the engineering, right? So you see, previously architecture is parked under humanity, right? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
so you see our value system, when we look at it in a humanity context, meaning the student have to be more equipped with general study, with liberal arts, with philosophy, although it look like they don't have a direct impact on architecture, but in my view it does, right? So but it become like, sometimes like even the last few years I feel there's a shift that actually scares me, right? Then one of the students want to do the UM, and then I suggest to her, after much discussion for master final year, is that UM as a student activism center. And then we talk about how it started, split off from Singapore, whatever. So get into politics, so the student get very excited, and then the lecturer also don't like it or whatever. But that's beside the point. What I'm trying to get at is I mentioned to her, I said, hey, do you know, like for example, Nelson Mandela. Who is Nelson Mandela? Mahatma Gandhi? Who is Mahatma Gandhi? I was shocked because he's architect, or regardless being somebody in the academic or study in university. Like how when we come to the situation that we lost touch with the general humanity value that represented by those few people. I'm not saying that they are perfect, but I feel that it become, to me, it become worse and worse. Like even now, I don't have to say that whether they know who our Alto is or whatever. I noticed that, like for example, a lot of social media like Pinterest, Art Daily, and things like that. The precedent study for 5th year, a lot of time they have images to show me, and quite a latest architects, yeah, not old architects. And then I say, who are they? Oh, sir, I don't know. It's just a very interesting image. And then I'm going to use this. Like in the past that you would want to know, not to say that you want to know totally what the architects stand for, but you know the value system for them to come out with this sort of or ideological things that they came out with a particular design.
So when we talk about ideological, you think that we should be more like AA, like in Chia Yvonne's case, going deeper into some theory, social theory,
Yeah.
interdisciplinary, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
I think probably you read the book called Fame, Fame, right? I think quite some time ago. So it's that they talk about how architects become famous, or the definition of fame, or whatever, right? They talk about AA, the Elvin Boyapsky, right? And then they conclude that pretty much Elvin Boyapsky, not that he doesn't have a position, he had a position, but he have like John Hayjuk, he have a lot people there, right? But he managed to like hold this together, like this totally diametrically opposed idea together. Those people that inside the same faculty. That I think what I mean by ideological things, we need some environment like that you become lively, right? The student will be confused like crazy lah, but these are the
Yeah,
course that
for
would
sure.
I think encourage a different way of looking at things.
Let me go back to your point just now when you were talking about assessing students' potential, right? In a more holistic way, yeah? You were talking about UPM, Zaki Jaafar, humanistic architecture. Actually, there was very good topic that you started talking about regarding the why are we moving away from humanities to engineering. And as a lecturer that has been 25 years in University Malaya, I noticed that as well. But our program, Alam Bina, went to under engineering school from the beginning. When you came in those early days, in 96, 97, 98, 99, we just started in 95, and we were a program in engineering. Now, this is kind of interesting because I have been a witness to certain things that have been happening. And before all this ranking system, rubric and all this thing, before if you were to look at the vice chancellor of University Malaya, it is either a medical person or an engineering person. When it's a medical person, it's a bit relaxed. When it's engineering people, they start doing all the ranking, become very important, and stuff like that. And it becomes, so the engineering idea, or the way because the engineering schools are top of the in world ranking. Electrical engineering is like fourth best in the world or something in electrical engineering. So they always rely on the engineers and the medical academics to
That's
lead.
exactly what it is. Like what Chia Kok Ming highlight to me, that we are in a quandary basically, because you see, for them, they want to know, how do you teach and how do you know your idea or your knowledge, whatever, can pass now in a measurable manner, right? And architecture is quite a different kettle of fish, if you like, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel educated is when I actually went to visit my school, my teacher at that time, Rick Laplastre and Bruce Ricard. They're building. I think that's probably the most amazing education, walking through the space, right? And how do you quantify that, right? And then talking to them, they're talking about life or talking about what they are, how they read the landscape or whatever. How do you quantify that? You can't come out with a rubric to look at things like that.
No. That's this fascination with rubric and all this is later in my role as an academic, and is very frustrating. And we just relied on, there was a stage where we just relied on the testimony of competence, that there are, the student, I mean, after first year, what is a competence, and second year, after third year, at the end of it, the big portfolio review at the end of the year. And we don't let the student go through to the next year because of certain competencies are not there. It's kind of traditional in that way. And through our own eyes, through our own debate, we go for debates. We will go to in front of the students' work and we debate about things, and we come to agree and disagree agree on our disagreement. And at the end of the day, I think the School of Architecture became more of a business and less of a learning center when we start having a voting system. Say, okay, how many of you lecturers in the portfolio review panel agree that this person should pass? And then I don't think that we should be, because when that's the last thing that we should do, there should be more of consensual agreement, like
we have to argue over
debate.
the point, right? A particular student. I think we have to judge like human being. It's not that we are not being democracy. I agree with you. Like it's a group. Like for example, I actually enjoy my time with UPM because I work very well with architect Sophie. He's a very, very open in the approach and stuff. So what happened is that when we come to assess a student, all six or all four or whatever lecturer, it is about like you're looking at the point, sometimes also that it's not that you don't want to fail the student, but sometimes failing a student may be good for the student also. If he or she didn't really measure up, he never do the thing or whatever, right? But overall, when you, let's say in the borderline case and stuff like that, it's like you'll be arguing a point why this student should pass or this student should fail, right? And then you get the best opinion will carry the day, right? It's not like we just so short of time, let's vote, right? So we don't really give the the student a chance.
I thought that was the start of the downfall of architecture education, when it's accepted to do voting like that, because we ourselves, the clue in architecture education is the educator themselves, how they look at learning, how they would have conversations with each other. Of course, we may disagree with each other in different things, but one of the crux is also the manual and digital drawing phenomenon.
That's actually my pet peeve. I go to all university, I tell them the same thing. Like for example, I look at myself, my own practice, right? Like when I draw, I'm quite good at drawing sometimes, right? Even the school student day, but architecture is not just about drawing. Like then for me, my practice, we draw because we have no choice. My last time is just a board and all those things. Every toilet have to lay out with a template because any problem you have to scratch, and then you can scratch so many times only before the thing bursts, right? So what happened is that manual to us, our older generation, is sort of like become part of us. But the new generation, I think their view of looking at things quite different, the digital. Now all university, UPM included, right? They said UKM also included. Like they are only allowed to touch the computer at second year, second semester, some earlier, or what have you. I think that is like something like elephant in the room that we are not addressing. Because the student these days, they are totally very conversant with computer. And then there's certain perverted things happening. Like first year students, some are more advanced, meaning because I cannot use what you call computer, right? So actually I use it in SketchUp or whatever, Rhino, and then later I trace it
Oh,
by freehand. A lot. I caught them, but not to say I caught
yeah.
them for the sake of revealing them. But I just want to show that, things of doing things are different already. And then why should you say it? They give them an idea after third year, very hard for us to see sketches already. Because they think, oh, it's okay, I can use computer. So everything moved to computer. My own practice, I communicate with my contractor using sketch with a graded paper, the detail or whatever, because it's the fastest way to communicate an idea to scale, right? And then all my conceptual drawing that I confirm my detail are all freehand, curvilinear or linear, right? So, but it is somehow they are more affinity, have better affinity to it. And interesting enough, I got a recent client go through a lot of things. He came back, he sent me back my hand-drawn drawing. I want back this one after he wants so many changes that with the computer drawing one. Right. So
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to say is that it is a lifetime practice. And then with digital, just don't be like, I feel that some school are so scared of it. I think no, let them be. But they have to go in parallel. I think 1 to 5 year master until your practice, they have to convince themselves. Like for me, I can convince them very easily. I can show them the things that I do that actually you need that. You need both, right? You need both. And it's actually not to show that I'm very good at manual, or manual is pretty, or manual is like this, like that. No. The immediacy of thought to a paper is through a pen on paper, the brain to the hand and then to the paper.
You know,
Faster than mouse.
uh, somebody who I'm interviewing on this aspect as well mentioned about muscle memory. Using the mouse and using the pencil is
Different.
different.
Yeah. Emotionally, I think you're not emotionally attached to a mouse, but you're emotionally attached to a
Yeah.
pencil. Yeah.
He did explain it quite well. How he would reason it out. Being the
Mm,
person who appreciate manual drawings and keep on sketching as a
mm,
project architect. So it was kind of interesting to see what he said about that. Going back into just as because we have been examiners in School of Architecture, we both can reflect upon the fears of academics that the student cannot be after part one. When they graduate part one, they are not ready to be what do you call it, with the digital drawing
mm,
skills. That's why they got them to do digital drawing even in the second year.
mm,
So where I came from University Malaya, it did in the second semester is when they allow them to do digital drawing.
mm,
So there will be, out of that 40 students, about maybe less than 5 would still use manual sketches in the beginning, but the others decided no. And then they would design, I've seen students design circular buildings from second year to third year. And then you with circular buildings, you don't have the sense of proportion, the sense of order and proportion, meaning, you decided not to go for squarish buildings or modular, and so you miss out on some sensibilities. So I'm concerned that the students, when they go out, they won't be able to cope with architecture sensibilities. They would be afraid to do certain things when they're in practice, or you know
In fact, I think you can do a anecdotal type of research. Talk to your student that's out there for about 5 years or 10 years
yeah, yeah,
and see what they do or how this thing. I think that'll be very interesting.
yes, yes, yes. Of course, the anecdotal research will be very welcome, So I think there's about a minute or two for your conclusion. Sorry, I've got a minute or two for you to conclude about what we have discussed today. And I think we just started from where we left off before in Clubhouse and our dealings with each other.
Yeah.
And so you could give a point or two that your concerns or maybe your advice, whatever that you wish to.
No, but mind you, I actually all very positive about the architecture thing because ultimately I'm involved, I think, back in 1991, so 30 odd years, right? But I think if it's 30 odd years ago, I still remember UTM, most of the building are gridded, and then I know I probably have a slightly different take on curvilinear. I feel that everything, as long as our auto is curvilinear, as long as there's a rationale or thinking behind it, that meaning that carry through with whatever shape that they want, I think I'm very open for that. But having said that, it is a big what do you call big space of time that you involved in education, like 30 odd years. But I find the key ingredient is still the student, right? And then as the educator myself, the first job I do, in fact, I didn't do anything architecture. I just want to create an environment. Let's say a group of like 8 or 12 students that I have to handle. I would create an environment that they feel free and they feel safe to express their opinion. Like I don't believe that I can control their action, like what to do, where to do, or what to do. But it's just like I would challenge them. But ultimately, I think education is about the educator. And with your group of colleagues, like create an environment that the student feel very safe to experiment. And then they feel that once even they are go off the what do you call off the tangent, if they still get supported in a way, right? So every university would have their own take. But ultimately, I would say with the 30 odd years that I involved, I think the key ingredient is still the student. And then I think the role of educator, apart from, of course, obviously we make more mistake than them. That's why we probably more experienced. But overall, I think it's still it's about we creating an atmosphere, a bigger atmosphere that they feel safe and that to operate, and then we can be honest with them. And a lot of time I would tell my student that when I'm appear to be against you, probably there's a time that I'm actually for you, because to challenge you to go over your own ground rule, right? And then I think it's more for for master degree especially. I think the key skill for the lecturer, especially as I can see a lot of them expect the student to listen to them and then want to see how they can influence the student. I think there's a mistake in my view. It's more for me, I would say, like what you say, it's a passenger. I say it's a passenger, but I don't think it's like a inactive passenger. You probably because you went through the journey, but it's more like you challenge them. But I would never tell them where to go. Meaning, if they set the ground rule, this guy want to do something about sponge city, climate change, and things like that, I quickly do my own research. And at the end of the day, I ended up learning from them. But I will, from my source, I would challenge from them. And from my own experience, I might challenge them technically, like they have a floating pontoon, blah, blah, blah. So I think overall, I think I actually enjoy both practice and education, right? I always give a lot of time back to education a bit, so that not so much for the student alone, but for me to learn as well. So I think that is a wonderful part about Malaysian architecture education lah. So that we make conclusion if you like.
Okay, thank you so much, Lok Wooi, for being here in Talk Architecture podcast episode with the interviews on certain individuals like yourself who are really keen on the architecture education and practice conundrum or linkages. Thank you so much, Lok Wooi.
You're most welcome. It's my pleasure. Good to talk to you again, Naziaty.
Okay, thank you so much.